Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my annual postseason predictions. So yeah, let's get right to it. In the first wild card game, we got the Tigers versus the Astros. I believe that the Detroit Tigers are going to beat the Houston Astros in 3 games. This is because of how hot the Tigers have been and how cold the Astros have been. I don't necessarily think that they are a better team than the Astros, but postseason has proved that it can be any direction it wants to go. So I believe the Tigers will beat the Astros in 3 games with how well they've got their players to play, their pitchers, Tyreek Skubal, all of that. I don't think the Astros are going to do too well against them. Next, we got the Kansas City Royals versus the Baltimore Orioles. I think this isn't going to be as close as people believe. A lot of people probably believe it's going to be a 3-game series. I think it's going to be a 2-game series. I do not believe the Orioles are going to win. I think the Kansas City Royals are going to sweep the Baltimore Orioles in the first round. I would probably say that the Orioles only get 1 to 2 runs up on the scoreboard. I don't think they are going to do too well again. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. Kansas City is they're going to beat Baltimore in the wild card. The next wild card game would be the New York Mets versus the Milwaukee Brewers. I'm not really sure how I feel about this. I think it's going to be a great series, but with how terrible the Brewers always do in the postseason, I don't think they're going to make it far. I think the New York Mets also will probably met, so they're not going to take the sweep, but the Mets will eventually win the wild card against the Brewers in 3 games. And Pete Alonso, he's kind of washed now, but I think he'll be a big help. So with Ronald Acuna Jr.'s brother, I forget his name, I think he'll be a big help to it. Brandon Nimmo will also probably get like a home run in there. That'll feel pretty hype. But the Brewers are just like, they don't have too many good players right now. Like Christian Yelich, I like to believe he's good. I think he's even injured right now. I don't know. Brewers don't have much going for them. Yeah. Now the last wild card series we got is the Atlanta Braves versus San Diego Padres. I think this is also going to be a 3-game series. This will be a fun one to watch. Atlanta is really hard to guess on what they're going to do in the postseason. They're either amazing or terrible. They have a lot of injured people right now, so it's hard to know. San Diego's getting kind of hot, but I'm not sure. I don't think much of their players have too much postseason experience. I could be wrong, but I don't think they have much experience. So I believe the Atlanta Braves will beat San Diego Padres in 3 games. Now, for the first American League Division Series, we would have the Detroit Tigers versus the Cleveland Guardians. I think this would be a very fun match, Central Division rivals. It would be close. I think it would go into 4 games. The first game would probably be a Tigers win because they would have the momentum from the wild card. I think same with the second game. Or not same with the second game. Stupid. But I think the Guardians from there would win the next 3 games. I believe the Guardians would eventually learn how the Tigers really are playing the postseason and learn from that. So they'll probably beat the Detroit Tigers in 4 games in the division series. The next American League Division Series would be the Kansas City Royals versus the New York Yankees. I think this would go into 5 games. The first going to the Yankees because they would have home field advantage and the atmosphere would just be there for them. And then in the second game, I think Kansas City would tie the series. And then on the way back to Kansas City, they would get the second their second win in Game 3 because they would be in Kansas City at that point. Game 4 would go to New York, I believe, and then back home to New York. I believe that the Kansas City Royals will win, probably in extra innings, against the New York Yankees, moving on to the championship series. In the first National League Division series, we would have the New York Mets versus the Philadelphia Phillies. This will probably be a sweep. I think that the Philadelphia Phillies will win all 3 games against the New York Mets, because they start with the home field advantage, and then they'll just bring their momentum all the way to New York and just be like a landslide. So the Philadelphia Phillies would move on to the National League Championship Series. And then the last division series would be the Atlanta Braves versus the Los Angeles Dodgers. This would go into 5 games, I believe, with Game 1 going to the Dodgers, Game 2 also going to the Dodgers, and Game 3 and 4 would go to Atlanta, and then Game 5 would ultimately turn back to a close game with the Los Angeles Dodgers beating the Atlanta Braves, moving on to the championship series. Now, the American League Championship Series would be an amazing series to watch, being against Kansas City Royals versus Cleveland Guardians, which would be another division rival in the American League Central Division. I think this goes into 6 games. The first 2 going to Cleveland because they would have the home field advantage. And then the third game would go to Kansas City. The 4th would go back to Cleveland. The 5th would go to Kansas City as well. And then the 6th game would go to Kansas City, bringing them to the World Series, beating their division rival. And then the National League Championship Series would be the Philadelphia Phillies versus the Los Angeles Dodgers. I believe this would be a 5-game series. It would start in LA because they have the home field advantage all the way to the World Series. LA would win Game 1. The Phillies would win Game 2. And then LA would win Game 3 through 5, bringing them to the World Series because I believe the Phillies will choke in the final game, or final series, I guess, bringing the Dodgers to the World Series against the Kansas City Royals. And then the World Series would be the Kansas City Royals versus the Los Angeles Dodgers. This will most likely go into 7 games, being with the Dodgers having the home field advantage. That's the only reason why it would go into 7 games. Dodgers would probably win the first 2 games, but the Royals would win the next 2, and then the Dodgers would probably win the 2 after that. The final game would come back home to LA, atmosphere high, and they will choke it. Kansas City Royals winning the World Series. I've been called crazy since July saying they're going to win, and look who's in the postseason now. Kansas City is most likely going to win the World Series in 2024.